Everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube, or welcome back if this is your 14th Season 2 of Nancy Drew episode review. We have reached the 14, 50, 60, sorry. We're within the final 5 episodes of the season. It's crazy how fast the January's been. It's also weird because, how quick things have been and also how things are, and I do believe this is now, I think we get one more hiatus, a little bit towards the finale, so we will be wrapping up things in June. So now that we're kind of in the home stretch, just a note is that we will be reviewing the remaining episodes season 2 of Nancy Drew. Then once we're done with that, we're going to do an entire season 2 review at the end of it, and then we will talk about our predictions for season 3. When that'll come out, what will happen because of it, and since we already will get a season 3, there won't be any sort of campaign. So with that being said, let's get out to this week's episode, where this has the classic feel of a whodunit, sort of more of like of an uncovering whodunit, as we see a very a ragtag group of people trying to solve this case and trying to figure out everything. It definitely reminds me of the old-fashioned mysteries I grew up watching. So this definitely felt like a little bit of like home to me. But I don't know, like it definitely kind of drove a little bit more into the psyche of Nancy this week, as there's a lot in her mind, especially towards the end when we got to see other things. Also, this episode kind of served as a well, how do I say this? Because I'm reviewing The Rookie as well, and The Rookie has been much more tackling on the recent events of hashtag Black Lives Matter, and then of course obviously with the with police, all the issues with policing currently in the system. They've been tackling that on more prevalent than not, and this episode kind of feels like their answer towards that in a way where it's like, yeah, there is definitely problems even in a small town like Horseshoe Bay, and we get to see that firsthand within this mystery. And otherwise, we get a couple of little minor updates. But I think this was another good episode for the show. Not one of the best, but still another good one. And it definitely sets us up for a kind of a different sort of, climax. As there is no big mystery this season. There really isn't. It's more really in the case of, Nancy trying to figure herself out in this current weird environment she's stuck in. Anyway, with that being said, let's get them through the butchered recap and talk about this week's episode of Nancy Drew. So we begin, apparently it's Nancy's birthday, or at least the birthday of Nancy Drew on her fake birth certificate, because remember, Mr. Drew and Mrs. Drew had to take Nancy away for a while in order to kind of just hide up suspicion. So technically Nancy's real birthday is kind of unknown to us, but to them, this is November 19th is officially Nancy's birthday. And also we have an official timestamp for the show right now. November 19th is when this event takes place. Nancy kind of doesn't want to do the big party. She doesn't want to do that. It doesn't seem like a big celebration towards right now. Plus, she doesn't feel like the name Nancy Drew should be worth celebrating, considering the fact she recently just kind of she's still screwed over her name a little bit and her credibility, and that's still kind of haunting her a little bit. But Mr. Drew's got some plans to kind of cheer her up a little bit. They get a doorbell, and initially Nancy thinks this is her friends coming over for a surprise party. It isn't. It's Detective Tamura, and he has an arrest warrant for Nancy because Nancy is being charged in. Damn, I forgot what the charge was. It was because she recanted her testimony. So I don't remember what the terminology was for her to be arrested, but I definitely know that it was something in relation to that. So she's being arrested. She's heading down to the station. Meanwhile, George and Bess are kind of doing their own side thing away for a bit. They want to do a little gift to Odette and try to figure out what happened to the woman who had originally fallen in love with her back when she was still alive. They want to figure out what really happened to her, so they need a connection to the spirit world. And because, as many people know, George's family is kind of really connected to that world, they decide to hit up one of George's old relatives, and they decide to use Ace's body as a human host, which is absolutely hilarious, and it gives Ace a little bit more to do this episode, because after last week, after the last 2 weeks which were very heavy on Ace, it was kind of nice for him to kind of go back into that comedic role scene, where when George and Bess performed the ceremony, the ritual, the ghost takes over, the spirit takes over Ace's body, but instead of Ace doing the voice, kind of like how George has been doing Odette's voice, Ace is it's just a dub over. So really, Ace's actor didn't really have much to do this week. No offense to him. So she gets channeled through it. Initially, it's just hilarious banter between George and her grandma, her great aunt. It's pretty hilarious. I can't really do that scene justice. But the aunt is willing to get on board with the whole, like, I'll help you figure out what happens to this girl type thing. But she kind of, is wanting to insult George about, like, her current life direction, her current, choices and what she's doing, that sort of thing. Basically openly mocking her and that sort of thing. We'll get back to them later. Let's get back to the main plot. So Nancy and Tomorrow arrive at the station, which has a lot of confused people already there for some unknown reason, as well as Nick and Ryan are there for, I forgot what reason Nick and Ryan were there. I really did forget. I think they might be there for the Hudson thing, but I highly doubt it. They're just there, conveniently there. So right now in the station is Nancy, Detective Tamura, this other on-post policewoman, a couple of a former detective, a random standbyer, a random woman, and Nick and Ryan. However, before they can be able to proceed any forward with generally anything, someone locks down the station, electrifies the doors, and basically says that, hey, look, all y'all here for a reason. There is a woman. Her name is Dolores. This ain't Westworld, but you know what I mean. She was killed. She died about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. But she didn't just die. She was murdered. And one of y'all have to figure out who killed Dolores. So, of course, obviously Nancy being the true prodigy protagonist here, she takes over the case and tries to figure out what's going on, as well as Detective Tamura is having to sit this one out since he was about to just say, fuck it, this person has no real validity to hold us here, so I'm just going to leave through the front door, and he gets electrified and knocked back. Kind of a dick, but like, damn, like that was not kind to him. That really wasn't. So Nancy's kind of in charge, so they're trying to figure out what is this case, and the overall function is that she, it was a missing person case for a little bit, and then they found her body and her car in a nearby lake. And this was happening concurrently with Nancy's first big breakthrough case. So while Nancy so what happened was this all coincided with Nancy's first case with the whole missing girl type ordeal. And because of everything going on, that one got the more attention. And Nancy was the one who solved it. Now Nancy solving it doesn't really have anything to do with it. It just happened to happen at the time, and their excuse was, the police just didn't have the manpower to like do 2 big searches. So Dolores had to kind of wait a little bit while the little girl took priority. And honestly, just on a general thing, yeah, they definitely did the right. Like, no offense, both lives matter. I do get that, but a little girl is gonna take a little bit more of a higher priority than an adult. No offense. Moving on. So then, now that they're establishing the basic detail of what everyone's involvement in, like everyone in the room besides our Nancy and Nick and Detective Tamura don't all have a reason to why they're there that night. So for the last night that Dolores was seen was at a restaurant in town. One of the dudes was there. He was just a casual smoker. He was just casual standbyer. There was another woman who claims she didn't have any sort of involvement in this matter, but she eventually will reveal she does. The other guy is the detective who managed the case briefly before, I guess he just left the force after that. And Ryan was being a drunk asshat, and he was just having a lot of problems at the time, and I'm presuming, and one of the nights he actually got locked in for I think drunk driving. I believe that was the case. So they're just trying to figure out what's going on. They're trying to figure out any evidence. Also, Detective Tamura is really out of it. The electrification definitely kind of like sent his body into a bit of a shock, or no pun intended. But he's having issues. He's not 100%, so he really can't be at the forefront of this matter. Also, the mysterious voice who's kind of locked them in there. The Arborator. This person is trying to kill them if they don't solve this case fairly quickly. Eventually, trying to flood the damn station and eventually electrifying them as a result. But they managed to try and just convince her to like convince this person. I'm sorry, I'm spoiling the freaking ending already. To like chill, give us time. We're gonna figure this out. Their first big revelation was the random woman turned out to be well, for now, the final person who saw Dolores alive. They briefly got into like a car collision. It wasn't really a full-on collision. It was just like a bang. And Dolores tried paying her off with money, but the woman was like, "No, I just want to do this via the insurance way. So please don't give me any money." But then later on, we figure out there was another thing that she kept from them. That also, after she had this encounter with Dolores, she called the police and informed them, like, "Hey, there was no, there was two of them." Well, there was two things about this woman that she didn't let on. One was that the other guy, the random guy, was not just an innocent stand-byer, but he also was being a little bit touchy. He was being a little bit more reasonable to why he had to keep her there. So there was more than that. Apparently, they were dating for a few months, whether or not they, and as well as it was an affair. So he didn't want her to tell her because he didn't want her to ruin, his life basically, and that didn't really sit well with her. So, and then from there, and then the other thing was that she called the police on Dolores because she thought she was a drug dealer, and she was making the claims like, "Oh, I didn't call her. I didn't want. The reason why I called the police not because she was, African American, being a drug dealer was because she was just had a lot of money. So I'm assuming she, it doesn't really paint her well. She said, "Oh, I didn't want this to get out on the internet. I didn't want to get canceled," or whatever terminology she was going to use. So I kind of escalated from there. Also, Detective Tamura is really after the count, so they have to try and figure. They plead with the arboretor, like let them out briefly so that he can go. Also, during this time period, Mr. Drew, initially not aware of the situation, is stopping by the station to just drop off Nancy some real food. But Nancy pushes him away using a very harsh message. But Mr. Drew kind of figures out that this is not really Nancy talking. So he figures out there was something involved. He recruits the rest of the Drew crew to help him out. But of course, Ace is still being possessed. So George and Bess are on stuff to help out. So they have this crazy plan of like, we're going to use the rubber car mats to not get electrified by the electrified doors. And if that doesn't work, we're going to scale the building. And I'm just thinking, this ain't Mission Impossible, Mr. Drew. You ain't freaking Tom Cruise. You ain't that. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? So they proceed over. Their plan fails epically, but it just times out enough for the operator to let Tamura go so he can get some medical assistance. So thankfully, Mr. Drew takes him over from there. But before Nancy is able to tell the others so they can escape, the last thing Tamura had in his hand, Nick finds a old erased message from one of the papers. It turns out that Dolores was in the station. She was at the station. So, with that being said, that means that's she didn't just directly go to the river as initially reported. She was at the station for some reason. So that's where kind of Ryan enters in, because Ryan was at the station that night. So how could he not hear anything? But because another thing that was kind of off about the reports was that Ryan on paper left at 8 a.m. but they let him go to midnight, which is suspicious since normally if you're drunk, and we saw this a few weeks ago with Bess and George, or Bess and Odette, that they will hold you overnight for you to sleep off the alcohol. So with that being said, that doesn't really doesn't bode well for the police station. So it's like someone in the police station is lying here, and I don't know how this gets out, because so the police officer who was the one who found Dolores was the former detective on staff. But according to the detective, he said, it was just a routine. I didn't want to arrest her because I didn't want to assume that I don't want to, it's still, it was an arrest based on racism. He didn't want that. But then I believe the issue that happened after that was, I forgot how it came out, but I believe they eventually figure out that Ryan did overhear some faint moaning, which could just be elevated to crying. And then the other police officer that was on staff for the desk duty that night basically reveals... Okay, I'm just going to say this all out because I'm getting really... Like, me trying to recite a whodunit is horrible. I apologize. Go watch the episode. It's much better than whatever I'm trying to do. So how the story goes is that the detective did find Dolores, arrested her, but however, he was being very aggressive with her, so he banged her head on the roof of his car, and he took her back to the station, but she was already, like, crying and feeling very... off it, because I'm pretty sure that bang really hurt her head. And again, any major force to the head is really bad, so that needs to be checked out right away. The police guard on duty said, like, hey, we should really give her some medical attention, but the detective's like, nope, don't give her anything, just leave her there. She's just faking the story, leave it alone. So they leave her for hours while she's crying, and then eventually she has a seizure in the cell. So, and then she dies from it because the detective said, oh, she's just faking it, don't worry about it. And she dies in the cell. And then once they realize she's actually dead, they're fucked because one detective caused this and the other cop didn't do anything to really remedy the situation. So this is all really bad right now for them. So to make it even more worse for them, they let Ryan go so they can move the body into her car. And they dump the body in the car into the river and hope to God no one ever notices. And because the only one who really notices was Dolores' mom, who was sadly passed away a week before the events of this episode. So she never got to see justice for her. And so yeah, now it's all clicking. And also there was a scene in the middle where Nick was talking to Detective Tamora about the whole matter of, like, they were going back around to the I believe they were coming around to the fact it was finding Dolores or finding the little girl. I think it was in that regard where, like, if Dolores was maybe not African American or black, maybe they would have put a little bit more emphasis on her case. And it also brings up the fact that a lot of, cases with people of color, with African American and with black people, are often ignored, not enough resources, left unsolved, and left to be just to be another cold case, and left without justice. So Nick definitely has a point there, and I believe the fact that it was either Nick or Nancy who says that between her boyfriend / person who was having having an affair with, basically dumped her. A woman called her a drug dealer and assuming of something that she's not. A police officer who harassed and violated her and assaulted her, and then a woman who didn't really basically care about her. All this happened in one night, and of course, obviously, it was all meant to come out in the end, crying like this is probably the worst chain of events of anyone's life, and then she ended up dying for it, which really sucks. So thankfully, after that's solved, the station is left on relieved. All the other cops come in. I'm presuming the detective and the former detective and the policewoman are being arrested for, one for murder and one for one for accessory to murder, while the other two are kind of like left as witnesses. So yeah, it really does. It just really does suck. It really does how this turned out for her, and thankfully now those two are gonna hopefully be served justice and be spending time behind bars, hopefully. But Nancy's not quite done yet because the Arboretor's still out there. And even though the Arboretor technically was just trying to get the confession out of them, she still technically locked people in the station against their will, nearly killed one of them. It's not something they can get away with scot-free. So, with that being said, Nancy heads to the church. Initially, I'm just thinking, like, oh, this is a confession scene. They're going to focus on this later. But no, in reality, Nancy, when she originally heard the Arboretor speak, she heard church bells in the background. And there's only one person working at a church right now because it's a small town, which is the Reverend. Yeah, the Reverend admits that she's a frequent goer of the police station, and she kind of felt bad because I believe she knew Dolores' mother, and she was there at the end when Dolores' mother passed away, and she knew that Nancy could be the one to solve this, and she already had a suspicion on who it was, but there was no concrete evidence to pin them on this matter. So having Nancy in the station, as well as having them there and having them in an isolated environment, was the opportunity for her to get the information she needed, which is sinister, kind of maniacal, but it did work. And Nancy decides, I don't think she calls the police on her. I don't believe so. Also, George and Bess head back over to the Claw, or at least George, to finish off her conversation with her great aunt. And yeah, it turns out that the woman Odette was in love with eventually found someone else. She had a beautiful marriage. She had a long life. She died around family. Odette is in a little bit of denial because she assumes that this person died with their names because they were just so intricately tied to Odette. But it is kind of hurtful that Odette thinks that, she just didn't, her life ended the day my life ended. And that wasn't the case. That really wasn't. So I don't know what more to say. I just feel bad for Odette now. And the great aunt, before she heads off back to the spirit world, she just advises George that you need to find a way to split Odette from your soul, because Odette's life force and your life force are combining, and because of Odette's short life force with your long life force, eventually they're going to accelerate and meet where you're going to have a shorter end just because Odette's in your body. So you need to split that up. So that's kind of scary for George to also deal with at the same time, as well as everything else. Ace comes back to his mindset, and he looks at George and yeah, I heard everything that was going on. And George's like, please don't talk about this right now. I don't want this to deter from Nancy's party. So please. So Ace decides to stay quiet. The whole Drew crew is coming together in Nancy's house. There was a official police announcement from Detective Chamorro that, yeah, they are very disgusted at how racism has affected their police department. They're going to be making efforts to kind of eliminate that mindset from the station, and it's a lot of work to be done eventually, which is actually a pretty good step. I do respect the fact they took time to tackle that on. And yeah, so everyone's at the party. Seems like everything's fine. Mr. Drew's having a little bit of a reasoning why Nancy's birthday was this specific day and why Nancy's name was picked out, and Nancy just has to excuse herself for a bit just to change clothes. But then she has a breakdown. She starts crying about just everything that's going on in her life right now, that nothing really is going the way she expected it to be. And she rips up most of her mystery wall. And she writes in her book, Everett Hudson should not go to jail. Justice is needed to take care of Hudson. What does that mean specifically? We don't know, because that's the end of the episode. So again, I really dig this episode. I really dig. I was a big fan of the whodunit component. I think they did a really good job with that storytelling element. I like the fact we are slowly kind of just deconstructing Nancy and trying to once again figure out who is she, what is she going to be now, and because there's a lot on the plate right now for her, and I really hope we continue to play with this. Will Odette and George be separated by this season's end? I don't believe the case would be. I mean, considering the fact that I'm presuming 4 of the or 5 of the planned episodes for season 1 were moved over. So with that being said, I don't know if that's going to be the case. But anyway, I really did enjoy this episode. I can't wait to see what next week's going to bring. But overall, with this week, another solid job as always. I love the way they tackled on the source with the real life issues going on in our world and applying that to this episode. I really did. I like that element, and yeah. There you go. I give this episode 2 thumbs up, and I believe that's going to do it for me tonight. So if you're unaware, this has been What's in the Tube from ActionX, reviewing every episode of Nancy Drew's second season. If you want to know what we're doing overall, What's in the Tube besides our Nancy Drew reviews, we're doing Walker episode reviews each and every Friday morning after a brand new episode on Thursday nights on the CW, or free the next day on the CW app. We're back tomorrow. That's going to be awesome. Can't wait to get back into Walker. It's been another stretch. We're in the second half finally. We're also doing Rookie Season 3 episode reviews each and every Monday morning after a brand new episode on Sunday nights on ABC or on Hulu the next day. This Saturday, we're beginning our Saturday time slot on What's in the Tube. That's where we're going to have for at least for about a month worth of episode. We're going to have four. Well, technically, if you include this week, 5. We're going to have 4 or 5 weeks of 4 What's in the Tube episodes every week. Because next week, High School Musical, the series, returns for season 2, and we will be reviewing every episode of the second season every Saturday morning after a brand new episode on Friday on Disney+. So, to get us back into the High School Musical spirit, this Saturday, I will be reviewing High School Musical 3. It's been a very long time since I've seen that movie in full. I've seen clips, I've seen the music videos, but I have not yet seen the full movie, I believe, since 2008. So it's been a very long 13 years for me. Will it hold up? I don't know. We'll figure it out that day. So that will be this Saturday. And then next week we'll be starting up HSM TMTS Season 2 reviews. So stay tuned for all that. But if you don't care about Nancy Drew, then you're in luck. We'll be back next week with another episode review. And next week's going to be the big one. It's the Backdoor pilot episode. It's a Backdoor pilot episode with Tom Swift, who is a well-known figure in the Nancy Drew books, and he has an official pilot order for a spin-off series. So we'll be meeting him next week. I'm very excited. I am very well. This is the first time on What's in the Tube. I believe we're going to review a Backdoor pilot. So this is gonna be fun because if this does well, if I enjoy it, I might go out to review the Tom Swift show. Well, it's not called the Tom Swift show. It's like the series based off him. If it does get picked up, which I don't know if it will, because it's crazy. Because a lot of more shows are being renewed from the CW, so I don't know if they're gonna have the space for a Tom Swift show. But with that being said, regardless of what happens, he's on next week. Hopefully, we'll love him and we'll see if he gets a show. But until then, that'll be next week. But again, if you're unaware, this has been What's in the Tube from ActionX. If you want to see more of us, please subscribe to ActionX on youtube.com/ActionX. Ring that bell for a notification when our next episode review is live for Nancy Drew, which is each and every Thursday morning. Like, favorite, share this episode review if you haven't already. It helps us get us out there to other members of the Drew Crew fandom who has yet to discover us. Helps us out figure out that YouTube algorithm that keeps screwing me over, as well as sharing is always for free. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with any sort of updates to the channel. And let me know in the comments below, what did you think of this week's episode of Nancy Drew? I'm always open to conversation down below, so please leave a comment down there. And as always, for all you members of the Drew Crew, I'll see you all next week for the next episode review. But until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.